Against all odds, family. Oh, great. Okay, perfect. Now we can see you, Loree. Perfect. Can you hear me?
I can. How are you,
Excellent.
Sylvia?
I am great. Thank you, Loree. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic.
Thank you for joining us, Against All Odds, family. This today is actually episode 7 of season 1. Can you guys believe it? It's just gone so quickly, and I have the pleasure to introduce Loree to you. Loree is a mom of her daughter is now 17 years old, Mia, but Mia has survived leukemia twice. And with it came together a whole lot of drama. So Loree is here to tell us the story. Loree, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It is absolutely my honor and privilege to be on your podcast. So thank
I
you
am
so much.
so happy you're here. I'm glad when you said yes. You have an amazing story, and I'm glad the world gets to hear it today.
Thank you.
So tell us. So Mia is now 17. She is a senior in high school. She's doing great. She's actually getting ready for college.
Hmm.
But when she was 17 months, I am sure you didn't see this coming.
No,
That's what happened.
she kept getting sick, and we didn't know what was going on, and she kept spiking these crazy temperatures, and would wake up like sweating, and we took her to 5 different doctors, Sylvia, 5, and they could not figure out what was going on. And it. I remember, just in my gut, my mama's instinct
Mm.
telling me that something was wrong, and that this was not a virus that just kept appearing. And so it took us about 5 or 6 weeks to finally get her diagnosed.
What were
Um,
the 5 doctors saying? What?
they kept telling us that it was viral,
Wow.
and we had one doctor who, without running any blood work, actually put her on steroids.
Oh,
And yeah, and I tell people all the time, never ever go on steroids without running a baseline CBC, which is just your basic blood test, so that you have a baseline. Because what he did was he threw her into a mini remission. It's one
mm.
of the first drugs they give you, and so she started to, what we thought, improve, but
Mm.
then quickly, went back to it. And I think it was what complicated the doctors being able to actually finally diagnose her with leukemia.
So it was almost saying she's okay, but she really wasn't. You
Oh,
hadn't gotten to the bottom of it. So you pick her up from school one day, and yeah, amazing. Tell us about that.
I picked her up, and I had taken her to, the girls had swim lessons, and I had brought Mia along, and I remember picking her up
Mm.
that day,
Mm.
and it was like the world stopped, and her belly just felt so hard,
Oh.
and she just looked so miserable. And I remember sitting her down,
Mm.
and I picked up my phone. I now had the pediatrician on speed dial,
Mm.
and I called her up, and I said, Liz, something's wrong,
Right.
and I need to have my daughter looked at today.
Mm.
And she was off of work, and she said, you know what? Bring her to my house. I want to double check her and make sure she's okay.
That's awesome.
And so we did. We packed up. I
Mm.
brought the other girls. I think I brought the other girls home. I don't remember. They may have been with me.
Mm.
Brought her to Liz's house. She examined her, and she said, I think her liver's enlarged.
Oh.
She said, I'm going to send you to the hospital to get checked out.
Mm.
And why don't you go settle the other girls? Just take your time, get them bed, get to the hospital. And that's what we did. We got there around 7 p.m. that night. They checked us into a room, and I remember her laying there. She just looked so pale, and That little crib they had her in looked more like a cage than it did a crib. And they came in and they drew her blood. And they said, just, relax. We'll be back in a while with the results. And they came bursting through the door. And that's when we found out that she actually had cancer.
Wow. 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 What was going through your mind at this point, Loree? Do you remember? Because I'm sure she mustn't have been feeling well, but the last thing that you expect your child to have is cancer.
It was, but there was I remember about a week before having a conversation with my dad.
Right.
It was when they had first run some labs. And I told my dad, I said, in my gut, something is telling me there's something seriously wrong. And I said, I'm scared. I'm afraid it's something. I even said the word cancer.
Oh, wow.
And my dad looked at me like, why would you even, think that? I said, I don't know, but something in my gut is telling me there's something seriously wrong with my child and the doctors aren't figuring it out. And so it was total shock when they told us this. Your whole world just completely, it's never the same, especially having a child that's had cancer. I would have gladly traded places with my daughter. And we just were stunned. And I called my parents, I called my brother, I called a few of my close friends and told them what was going on. And then I remember they whisked her off to PICU. I mean, her white blood cell count was so high. It should be between 4,000 and 6,000. It was 160,000 plus.
Whoa.
And they said, we have to take her to PICU immediately. And so she just, they like raced, she was gone from the room.
Wow.
And my husband and I were just kind of like, what just happened? And we couldn't go into PICU right away. They wouldn't let us into the room. They said that we wouldn't be able to come in until around 6 a.m.
Right.
And so I remember walking the halls of the hospital, and my brother and my dad showed up. And and then we just waited until we could get into PICU. And that was really disturbing when we finally did get in.
But it just goes to show a mother's instinct is never wrong, is it?
No, and I would encourage people to really question, and really, if you have this gut sense that something's wrong, continue to pursue that, because had I not pushed, they told me that if we had not gotten her there that night, she might not have survived.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
She was that sick.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And Mia, so you got the diagnosis in June 2004. In August 2005, you receive more news from an oncologist. Just tell us about that.
Oh, that was crazy. Up until that point, the protocol, which is just the treatment plan for leukemia, is generally 3 years, or at least it was at that time. And so we were about a year into treatment. And she went in for a routine spinal tap where they administer chemo into the spinal cord system. And we got a phone call a few days later that after that test that there were some abnormal cells. And I knew that could mean a potential relapse, which honestly up to that point was like my worst nightmare. That was like, that was the one thing I didn't want to have happen. And Dr. Yu told us, me as oncologist, said, look, come into the hospital on Thursday. We're going to run another test. And then we'll see. It could be, I asked her, and she was, Dr. Yu, one of the things that I love most about her was that she would give it to you straight. And I asked, and she said, it could be, but it may not be. So let's see what we're going to, see what we got.
Yeah.
So we went in and ran the test again. And I knew the second they walked in the room, because she had the social worker with her. And I could tell, you could tell by the energy, you could tell by the look on their face. And, it was like, oh my goodness, and I knew that meant Mia's chances for survival drastically dropped.
Right.
And so, we were like, well, what do we do? And our middle daughter, Meredith, was having her birthday on Saturday. And Dr. Yu said, you go have her birthday party, and then we'll check you in on Monday or Tuesday of the following week, and we'll start her new program, which was more intense chemo and included now spinal and cranial radiation, as well as a stem cell, also known as a bone marrow transplant. And so that's what we were facing when we checked into the hospital.
Wow.
And yeah.
Did you see it coming? Was she unwell at the time?
She was doing great. She looked good. Wow. She looked so much better. I had no clue that she was, I think we caught it fairly early.
Okay.
When they found it in the central nervous system. So that
count your blessings, huh?
Yeah. And that little girl was so prayed over. We knew we had to trust that God had a plan. Right. And whatever was going to happen, it was going to be okay.
Right. So at this point, she has relapsed leukemia. Leukemia is back. She's just under the age of 3. You start treatment, and as if things aren't bad enough, you are in New Orleans in 2005. Hurricane Katrina is on its way.
Yeah.
What do you do?
Well, I kind of hit the panic button, to be honest. I did not want to be there. And we always evacuated for major hurricanes, because you just never knew what was going to happen, because New Orleans is below sea level. And this was a big one. This was a Category 5 with 175 mile an hour sustained winds. And I had overheard some of the maintenance workers talking and knew that the windows weren't rated that high. And so I was kind of freaking out, and I wanted to leave. And the doctors were like, you can't just pick up and leave. You can't go get chemo just anywhere. And I remember Dr. Singleton, who was the pediatric oncologist on call, who was 6 months pregnant, telling me, Loree, she said, if I have to give your daughter her chemo in the dark with a flashlight, I will make sure she gets it. And I was like, you know what? If Dr. Singleton can suck it up, I can suck it up. And so we did, and we rode out the hurricane. It was very, very traumatic. I'm not going to lie. It was super stressful. You could feel the building shaking. You could, when the wind was so loud, and we had water coming in through our window. I remember Mia waking up, and she's like 2, sitting in that little crib, and she's like, what's that noise? And we're like, oh, maybe that's just the wind. Go back to bed, and
it's nothing.
Yeah, it's nothing. And, I wound up fracturing 2 of my teeth during that storm. I was so just, from grinding my teeth and just, yeah, it was surreal. And I remember thinking it could be worse.
Right.
I remember thinking the lady across the hall from me, who became my friend that night, as we sat and listened to the radio broadcast, her son had just been through transplant. And I thought that would be worse, because, he's already majorly immunocompromised, and they're having to move him around, and I just couldn't even imagine. So yeah, it was a tough time.
I do love the way you think, Loree, because it doesn't matter how bad your situation is, you just kind of think that someone's got it a lot worse. So the Monday after, thank God you survived, Katrina. You think things are over, but it's not quite over, is it? You are a survivor and a half, Loree. You're amazing.
Oh, well, you do what you got to do, I
Right?
mean,
Yeah.
when you're put in those situations. But yeah, it was that Monday is when we went, and early that morning, Mia had her chemo and her lumbar puncture scheduled for that morning at 7 a.m. And
Mm.
we thought we kind of dodged a bullet because, everything was quiet, and we thought everybody's kind of looking around like, are we okay? Did we make it through? And I remember talking to the nurse anesthetist, and he had come in from Lakeway, and he was like, yeah, we had phone service. It was crazy. And then about 9:30 that morning
Mm.
is when the levees broke. And the levee is like the barrier, kind of like a raised hill barrier that
Right.
goes around the city. And there was a breach in the levee,
Mm.
actually near not Lakeway, Lakeview.
Mm.
I'm confusing the two. And that was where the nurse anesthetist lived. And we used to live in that neighborhood. And that neighborhood had like 12 feet of water come into it. And it just started pouring into the city. And just like a bowl with water being dumped into it, the
Wow.
water just started to rise. And so that's when all the really significant damage started to happen. And
Wow.
we were getting our information really through the one television that was in the lobby of the hospital. Yeah, it was
So
crazy.
it's it's Tuesday, and your husband is telling you have to evacuate
Hmm.
from New Orleans because everyone is evacuating. There's an order to evacuate. Tell us what you had to overcome to get out.
We were told that the hospital had to be evacuated, and that we could try to get out on our own, or we would have to leave with the National Guard. And we wanted to try to leave on our own so we could have a vehicle. And we were given two choices. You can either go to Birmingham, Alabama, or you can go to Houston, Texas.
Okay.
And I was like, well, we're going to Houston. My mom and dad and my two other children are on the Texas Louisiana border on the way to Houston,
Okay.
and we have a family in Houston, so we're going to Houston.
Mm-hmm.
And so that we waited until daylight because it was very dangerous to leave. The power lines were down, the trees were down, and there were no lights. And so we waited until daylight.
Mm-hmm.
And my husband unknowingly took the only accessible route out of the city, because we literally followed the edge of the bowl along the levee system so that we could avoid down trees and power lines and flooded streets. And
Wow.
he was driving up on the side of the levee most of the
Mm-hmm.
time. And then we got to the causeway, which is an elevated expressway. And so we were able to shoot out to the interstate. And I remember you're going over some of these major highways as you're getting to the interstate, and there's nothing but like a sea of water as I'm looking out, and the windows and the buildings are blown out, and we get to the I-10, and there's a Black Hawk helicopter circling, and there's all these buses and all these people lined up waiting to be evacuated.
Wow.
And I just remember telling my husband, get me out of here.
Wow.
And we got on the interstate, and there wasn't a soul on the interstate, except on our side anyway, leaving the city.
Mm.
But as we looked to the left, coming into the city,
Right.
miles and miles and miles of people towing flatboats into the city
Wow.
because they were coming there to rescue people. It
Wow.
was crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. So you ended up in Texas,
Mhm.
Houston, Texas. Your little Mia needs a transplant.
Mhm.
Her sister Meredith is a match. She's only 6 years old, though.
Yes.
Um, how do these conversations even go at that age? Are you like, your sister is dying and we need you to save her?
That was probably one of the most challenging situations. Meredith was, we were so blessed to have a perfect match in
Mm,
Meredith.
mm,
And, but Meredith was so young that she truly couldn't comprehend that this was a life and death situation. I don't think that a 6-year-old really understands what it
right,
means, to die.
right.
And she, Meredith's a lot like me, very hard headed, likes to want to try to feel like she's in control.
Right.
And she wasn't at all sure she wanted to do this. And I remember having a conversation with her and my oldest daughter, Madeline, when we knew we had to move forward with the transplant. And I had taken them over to Ben and Jerry's to have that conversation. And I
But
remember
because ice cream makes everything better.
exactly, right? Who can have Ben and Jerry's makes everything better.
Yeah.
And so we had that conversation, and Meredith, I will never forget, looked at me, hand on hip.
Oh.
She was sassy. She's still sassy. I love it. And she says, "Well, who's going to be the donor?" And I said, "Well, honey, you are." And she said, "Well, what if I don't want to be the donor?"
Oh.
And I said, "Well, baby," I said, "we don't have anybody else that can do it. You're the only one." I said, "Without it, she's not going to survive." And she said something to me that just like was like a dagger in the heart because, and I know she didn't mean it, but she
Mhm.
said, "I don't want to do it. I don't care if she dies." And I, I tell you, at that point,
Wow.
my heart was I was I was mad. I
Mm.
was mad. I was so
Mhm.
mad,
Mm.
but I was also so heartbroken.
Right.
And I said, "We have to get in the car. We have to leave." We
Mm.
got in the car. We drove back to our apartment, which was just a couple minutes away. And she had a full on, like, I'm talking kicking and screaming temper tantrum on the floor of the apartment. And I
Wow.
remember calling the school counselor because that's all I had at the time
Mm.
and saying, "Here's what's happening. And I don't know what to do."
Right.
And she said, "You need some help." And she said, "This is above my pay grade." She said, "I'm going to get you some help." And she
Okay.
did.
Mm.
And I'm so grateful for her. And she referred us to a psychologist at MD Anderson, and we managed to work that out somehow or another. And I'm telling you, I had so many like angels looking out for us that were helping us with all these different things that I just couldn't. I was really struggling to function.
Mm.
I didn't realize it at the time, but I was
Mm.
also struggling with PTSD.
Right.
So yeah, she finally got us some help, and that made all the difference with Meredith, and for me too.
Mm.
Made a big difference.
You went through a lot as a family. We went through a lot. And so she ended up being a donor. How was that on their little bodies for both of them?
So it was really rough. I remember Meredith was she was willing to do it, but she was terrified.
Mm.
And she had to have a central line put in place, which required surgery. And they hooked her Meredith up to what they call an apheresis machine, which is where Meredith had to have like 10 days of shots to boost the stem cell production in her body. And then they hooked her to this apheresis machine
Oh.
that would pull pull blood out of her body it would filter out the stem cells, it would warm the blood back up and put it back into her body. She had to be hooked up to this thing for, it was either 2 or 3 days
Oh.
to harvest enough stem cells. And Meredith was so scared that she worked herself up to the point where she was physically ill. She was throwing up.
Oh.
And I remember they called me, and I was in the hospital room on the other side of the hospital with Mia. And they're like, you know, she's, and I said, look, can you give her something? And they said, we can give her Benadryl. And I said, give her Benadryl. My husband was with Meredith, but I said, I want to go see her. So my dad came up to stay with Mia so that I could go down and see Meredith. And so Meredith is throwing up, but the Benadryl made her very sleepy. So she finally relaxed. But that was very traumatic for her. And then poor little Mia on the other end of the hospital, the chemo that they were giving her to get her ready for the transplant, because this was probably within the 2 weeks before transplant, because they have to harvest them. They wanted them as fresh as possible.
Right.
And poor little Mia is throwing up. And she's vomiting some stuff you don't even want to know. I mean, it was scary stuff. And I just was like, Lord, you've got to help me, because I can't do this on my own. I mean, I just, to see both of them like that.
Yeah.
But I couldn't be in 2 places at one time. All I could do was go back and forth between the two. It was awful. It was absolutely awful. One of the worst experiences ever.
I am in awe of how your bravery and your strength and the amazing woman that you are. You have been through so much and you're standing. Now, transplant finally happened in April 2006. 3 weeks after you're hoping to be discharged, but it would be too simple if things went well, right?
Yeah, it never is easy. We thought that after about 3-4 weeks in the hospital, her counts had started to come up actually on Easter Sunday, which was, I thought, I thought that was a really strong sign that she was going to be okay.
Right.
I thought that was, absolutely God telling me she's going to make it. And then she started to experience some swelling, and one of the night nurses noticed it first. And the next day they came in and they said, we have to run some tests. We think she may have VOD, which stands for veno-occlusive disease. And I knew from my research that was one of those really serious complications that you do not want to get. You don't want to have an infection, because an infection can kill them. And you don't want to have VOD, because that can also kill them, because what it does is it occludes the arteries the veins that are leading into the main organs of the body. And so if your liver and your kidneys can't get blood, they start to die, and you will ultimately die.
Right.
So VOD has a very serious mortality rate. And I remember them telling me that she did have it, and I just lost it. I remember walking out of the room and I lost it. It still makes me emotional thinking about it. And I had to call my dad, and they came to the hospital. We didn't think she was going to make it. And they brought my other daughters, and the Dr. Yu, who I cannot say enough good things about this woman. Her specialty, I knew that God had led us to Dr. Yu, because her specialty was dealing with VOD. And she explained to me that they wanted to try an experimental drug on Mia that the best analogy she could give me was it's kind of like putting Drano in your pipes, and it will bust through. They'd had some success busting through the occlusions with this drug, but that it was highly carcinogenic. It was, experimental, but it was basically our only hope. And I said, well, it's the lesser of two evils. We have to do it. And after much prayer, we decided, yes, let's do this. And so she had to. It was a very, very delicate balance because of the transplant and because of the drug that she was getting. She literally had to have platelets and or blood 2 to 3 times every single day for nearly 2 months. And it was just crazy. But I'll tell you what, that little girl is such a miracle. She had so many people praying for her. And I so believe in the power of prayer.
Right.
And when she got well, she never, ever was admitted to the hospital again. Dr. Yu was like, I don't know what you're doing, but keep doing it. When she finally got out, she never looked back, and she just started to improve, and it was, honestly, such a miracle. And we're just so blessed because I have so many friends whose children are no longer on this earth. They're now angels in heaven. And, I feel very, very, very fortunate, very blessed. And I know that God has a real plan for Mia.
I want to show some photos of Mia when she was undergoing treatment. Was this pre or post transplant?
That would have been pre-transplant, right before transplant, when she was going through radiation. That's actually our FEMA trailer that we had in the backyard. And you can see all my books next to the bed in the back, which is kind of funny. But she liked to play doctor, so she's playing doctor right there. And she was pretty skeletal, getting ready for transplant.
Wow. And this is her in good spirits.
That is Mia dancing post-transplant. She had to wear that awful mask, but it protected her, so I'm not going to complain. And you can even see her little central line hanging out. And she was so tiny, but her spirit, she's dancing. My child is dancing.
Wow.
That just shows you. It was crazy because when her being so little was such a blessing in disguise, because she didn't really know that the chemo was supposed to make her sick. She was like, I want to go play. I want to go have some fun. Wow. So that was her dancing.
Wow. So you're in Texas for 6 months during this period. Your family at some point have to divide and conquer because, of course, you still have a home back in New Orleans. So your husband keeps going back and forth to make sure that your house is in good order. You alone with 3 girls. Mia is the last of your 3.
Yes.
How did you cope with all of this going on?
Well, not as well as I would have liked, but I had a lot of help. Seriously, the Vineyard Church over in Spring, Texas adopted us, and they helped us get the apartment. They helped furnish the apartment. They would come to the, it was like being a single mom because Carl was, trying to get our home repaired so that we had something to come back to at some point.
Right.
And I couldn't get Mia to her treatment and get the girls to school, and I couldn't juggle it all on my own. So literally there were people. There's one woman in particular, Kathy Yarbrough, who would come to my house at 5:30 in the morning, and because Mia would often have a 7 a.m. appointment, and it was clear across town in Houston, which is huge, so it'd take us an hour and a half with traffic to get to the hospital. She would come at 5:30 in the morning,
Wow.
wait for my other two to wake up. She would fix them breakfast, and then she would take them to school.
Mm.
And she was such a godsend. And I mean, she among many, many, many folks would come and just
Mhm.
give me a little relief here and there.
Right.
Um, because it was very overwhelming to try and
I can only imagine.
deal with all of this. And I had a lot of just there was a lot of bad stuff running through my head, if you know what I mean.
Mm.
Yeah,
Mm.
it was having the cancer diet. The cancer was bad enough,
Right.
and then
Right.
coupling that with being displaced by a natural disaster. My
Right.
heart breaks for those folks that are dealing with that and COVID on top of everything
Right.
else right now.
Right.
Just
Right.
it's
Right.
more than it should be allowed to withstand.
Yeah. Yeah. You went through some trauma, and I think sometimes when we're going through, we don't even realize just how much we're taking on, especially for women. We're just being hit from all sides, and all we can do is we've just got to survive. And when it's all over, we just don't even realize just what it has done to our minds and our bodies. Um, so Mia is done with transplant. Oh, there's one more photo. That's so sweet that I wanted to show. Um,
That's Mia and my dad
right,
post transplant.
post transplant. Sweet, sweet. Now, Mia didn't completely come out unscathed. She didn't go back to hospital, but she didn't come out completely unscathed. She's fine, but she still has to deal with some complications.
Sure.
Yeah, tell us about that.
Well, I think again, I feel very blessed that my daughter is here.
Right.
Um, I know that the psychologists, they track her. She goes annually for checkups because they track the long-term childhood cancer survivors. And the psychologist told me, she said, your daughter really should not have the mental acuity that she has. Like that's like seriously like a miracle because of you don't radiate a child's brain at age 3 and expect them to come out
Mm.
normal. And I always joke and say she either was a genius to start
Mm.
or, they didn't kill as many brain cells as they said they were going to, but she's a very good student. But some of the things that did impact her, the radiation, her hair did not come back. And so she maybe has about 10% of it. It's very patchy. To look at her, you'd think she was bald. And that's okay. She wears a hairpiece and she's learned to deal with it. And frankly, it doesn't bother her.
Mm.
The reason she wanted a hairpiece wasn't for vanity. It was because she didn't want to be treated differently because she looked differently.
Mm.
So
It was
she,
still okay, even if she wanted it for vanity.
absolutely, absolutely,
She has been through so much.
and she has some, she's on some thyroid medication, and she has ovarian failure from the treatment and a lot of issues with her teeth and her mouth, as well as some scoliosis from all of the treatment as well. And so she takes some medication. Uh, they had to actually induce puberty in
Oh,
her because of the damage to the ovaries,
wow.
and so that is something she'll probably have to deal with for the rest of her life. But
Mm.
uh, she's this kid, I'm telling you, she was the most amazing patient, and she is the most amazing child. She's just so laid back and easygoing,
Mm.
and she inspires me on a daily basis.
I can
It's crazy to
imagine.
see how calm and just peaceful she is, and she has such a strong spiritual side to her,
Mm.
and it's just a beautiful thing. It really is.
Wow. Wow. I'm gonna put a photo up put up a photo of Mia now, but how is she doing now, and what are her aspirations for the future?
She is doing so well. That's my beautiful little girl.
She is
She's
beautiful.
chosen to be a redhead, which I absolutely love on her. She's very, very pale like my husband,
Right.
which was probably one of the reasons why we had difficulty getting her diagnosed. But she is a senior at Vanderbilt High School this year, and she wants to go to Texas A&M and study veterinary medicine and or animal science. She's not sure whether she's going to go the vet route or the zoology route,
Wow.
but she loves animals and just has a real gift with them. She's very talented in that arena and just a beautiful soul inside and out.
Hmm. Hmm. She looks beautiful.
Yeah.
Now, for you, Loree, you have been through a lot.
Yeah.
Your daughter was going through cancer twice. You had to go through Hurricane Katrina. That is a lot of trauma. Tell us how you have been affected by all of that and how you have dealt with it.
You know, I've seen several therapists through the years trying to work through some of the trauma, and it helped for a bit. But what I didn't realize was that I was still carrying around a lot of residual from that emotional trauma and from that PTSD. And I guess when I realized this very clearly, I had gone down to volunteer after Hurricane Harvey. And as I drove into Port Aransas, the it was it reminded me so much of what I had seen during Hurricane Katrina.
Mm.
There was debris piled up 3 stories high. It was awful, and I literally had a I had a physical reaction to it,
Mm.
and I started to have a panic attack, and I realized I couldn't do it. And I had driven 4.5 hours down there to volunteer, and I literally had to turn my car around and drive back because
Wow.
I knew I needed to deal with some of those issues. And so, it's been a long process. I wish I had gotten more help sooner,
Right.
but being hard headed, thinking you could do it on your own, I didn't do as much of that. I didn't get to the root cause of all of that. And unfortunately, it was reflected not only in things like that, where I had like a panic attack, but also my weight. I was much heavier and had been kind of yo-yoing with my weight for years.
Mm.
Had reflected in our my relationship with my family, with my husband, and even in our finances. And
Mhm.
it affected us across all areas of life. And so this past year, I knew I needed to we lost my dad at the end of last year,
I'm
and
sorry.
he was my rock,
Mm.
and then, gosh, a week later, we lost one of my dogs. So 10 days later, the second dog.
Yeah.
And 3 months to the day, my dad passed. My wonderful mother-in-law passed away. And then, of course, COVID hit.
Oh.
It just really sent me into a tailspin. And my weight skyrocketed and my blood pressure skyrocketed.
Mm.
And doctor had me on medication. And I had a particularly bad experience with the high blood pressure. I literally burst the blood vessels in my eyes, and I thought my head. I kept saying I felt like my head was going to explode,
Wow.
and I knew that was my wake up call. Like I could have had a stroke, and I said I have to get healthy. I have to do something about this, and
Mhm.
so that was a defining moment for me, and I started doing more personal growth and development and hired a coach and really started to get rid of all of the negative emotions
Mm.
and the beliefs that had built up for more than a decade. More
Mm.
than a decade,
Right.
they'd affected me.
A lot.
And as I released those emotions,
Mm.
what happened was not only did I get happier, okay,
Mm.
but the weight also released.
Wow.
And I've lost 42 pounds
Wow,
this
Loree.
year.
Wow.
And it's changed everything for me. I work out every single day now. I'm training for my first 5K,
Oh, wow.
and I just it's been life changing for me, and so much so that I've actually become a life coach so that I can help other women. And
Wow.
my passion is really helping women that obviously, struggle with the same type of issues.
Mm,
Fear, overwhelm, anxiety, emotional eating, and my heart really goes out to those that have children that have life-threatening illnesses, and so
mm,
that's what I do now, and it's what I love, and um, it's through all of that that I actually met you, and
mhm.
I'm just very grateful to be able to share, and if I can help just one person,
Right.
just one,
Mm,
it's all worth it.
yeah.
And I know that I almost feel like God's led me full circle, if
Mm,
if that makes sense. That's how I feel. And
absolutely.
yeah, it's just a
Absolutely.
really amazing thing. And it's yeah, it's life is good. God's good.
Amazing. Amazing, Loree. Loree, looking back on your very tough journey, is there anything looking back that you would do differently?
I I would have gotten help sooner. I would
Mm,
have gotten more help sooner.
right.
I would have worked harder around those issues, not realizing it's very humbling to be on the receiving end. And I know that that was something that was very challenging for me because, I was kind of at the mercy of the kindness of strangers during all that. And
Mhm.
it, it taught me a lot, and it strengthened my faith, and it made me want to pay it forward.
Right.
And, until you get yourself, just like they tell you on the airplane, right?
Mm,
Put that oxygen mask on your face first,
right.
because if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care
Mhm.
of others.
Absolutely.
And I feel like I lost some time where I could have been helping others rather
Mm,
than struggling on my
mm,
own.
mm,
And so that's what I want to do, is I want to help women, because I know that, all these tools and techniques that I've learned this year,
mm.
oh my goodness, it's just, you can get there so much faster, so much more quickly, and clearing that out, it's just made such a difference. It really has, and that's, I want to be able to help other women do
Yeah.
the same.
Yeah.
Get free, get clean, get cleaned up, and free from that, all that emotional trauma
Mhm.
that you're carrying around. And I mean, I have talked with women that everyone's got something. Everyone has a story.
Right.
You do.
Absolutely.
None of us are immune to
No.
trauma. None of us are
Mhm.
immune to hurts and natural disasters, and cancer doesn't, it's not biased. It affects
Yeah.
everybody.
Yeah.
So,
And COVID now.
and COVID, oh my
Yeah.
goodness. I mean, that has just been, yeah, it's, I believe in the power of prayer. I know that we will get through this. It's going to be a different world, that we live in now.
Mm.
But, we can all make the best of
So
the circumstances. You
absolutely.
just have to look for the good. There's
Right.
good in everything.
Everything. Absolutely.
Everything.
Absolutely. I
I
agree.
mean, I look back on Katrina, and some of my best friends were made during Katrina.
Wow.
Uh,
Wow.
Vicky Bergeron, the mom that whose son had just gone
Mhm.
through
Mhm.
transplant, her son passed away.
Oh,
And, but it's such a beautiful story. And Vicky's such a woman of faith. And I
wow.
love all of my other fellow moms.
Mm.
They're such strong women. They're warriors. They're
Wow.
warriors.
Wow, Lori. Lori, what keeps you going? Is
It's,
the motivational force behind you because you still keep believing, you still think that things will turn out fine, you still what keeps
I do not want to go to my grave leaving un leaving behind or leaving unwrapped any gift that God has given me.
Mm,
He's given me a lot of gifts. He's given me a lot of blessings.
mm,
And I want to be able to be utilized by Him,
right.
for Him,
Mm,
however He sees fit.
right.
And so I just want to be a vessel that can shine His light upon others, because what this world needs right now is
Mm,
more light. They
abs-
need more God.
absolutely.
It's just it's sad to see the division in our country.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that's not that's not how we're intended to live.
No.
We're all
Mm,
human beings and we
abs-
need to get along.
absolutely. Absolutely.
So I want to say, yeah, it's about exhibiting the fruits of the spirit:
Mm,
love,
love.
kindness, patience,
Right. Right.
faith, goodness, all of those things.
Mm,
And
mm,
so that's my desire, is to be the best possible person that I can be
yeah.
and to shine God's light to others.
Awesome. Awesome. Loree, as we bring this interview to a close, um, I am sure there are people watching this who are in the position that you were 15 years ago. They are embarking on a journey that thankfully you have come out of,
Mhm.
fighting for their kid's life because of an illness, or maybe they may have a disabled child, or it may be themselves going through hard times. I just want you to give them a message. What would you say to someone who is going through right now?
First of all, you're not alone.
Mm,
And if you want someone to walk alongside of you, I would love to do that.
mm,
And I offer like free 50-minute calls. All you have to do is go to my website,
mm,
and we can see whether or not it's a fit.
right.
But I would love to walk alongside you
Mm,
and help you through your journey to
mm,
get to the other side,
mm,
and to be all of the woman or man that God created you to be. Because I know that there are blessings in
mm,
it. Sometimes it's just so difficult to see
mm,
it,
mm,
but you are not alone, and you do not have to walk alone. You never walk alone.
mm.
Okay. But I'm happy to walk alongside. And so please, reach out to me, and we'll see whether or not it's a fit, and be more than happy to help, because that's what I want to do, is I want to help other women and other men and other parents who are going through similar circumstances, because it is a rough journey, and
Mm,
no one should have to deal with it by themselves.
abs-
And yeah.
absolutely. Loree, on behalf of my viewers, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us on Against All Odds to share your story.
Thank
You and
you.
Thea are warriors. Yeah, you're amazing. Your story is amazing. And just to see you, how you have come out. You didn't come out. You were a rough diamond. You were a diamond in the rough, and you have come out dusting yourself, and come out like the pure diamond that you are. And I just want to say thank you, and I appreciate you so much for coming on to share your story. I know parts of it were not easy going back memory lane, but you have been strong and you have shared your story, and I just want to say thank you so much.
And I just want to say thank you to you, Sylvia, because what you do is so inspiring. And I just feel blessed to have met you, I feel like we're friends. And, I want to just continue this journey with you. And just thank you for allowing me to share my story and just be a small part of this, because what you're doing is impacting lives. And that's what it's all about, isn't it? Impacting others.
Absolutely,
So
absolutely. We're here to
thank
serve
you.
and impact lives. Thank you, Loree, and viewers. Next week is our 8th episode, and we look forward to seeing you then. Thank you all.
Bye.